Hello everyone, today we'll be talking about the worst historical events that would happen during the holidays. This is going to be the worst events that happened on Halloween, Thanksgiving, or Christmas. And I'll let you in on a little secret. The reason why I'm doing all three holidays is because I actually wanted to do just Thanksgiving, but I realized that the video was going to come out on the 29th, which is a day after Thanksgiving, so that kind of doesn't work. So, you know what? When handed a basket full of lemons, throw it back at the person who handed it to you. As you can see, I got the Christmas lights up. It's going to be very festive. That's my friend's artwork. You should go follow her. I'll link it in the description. Speaking of things I'll have linked in the description, I'll have all the sources below, seeing how this is a historical video. I want you to see where my information comes from, especially if you want to do some more reading on your own. Alright, let's ruin the festivities with talking about the worst things to happen to people. Yay. Before fully jumping in, if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, it's good to see you again. Alright. The worst events to happen on Halloween. Benito Mussolini is appointed as Prime Minister, October 31st, 1922. Yeah, we're starting this list off hot. Mussolini was the Italian Prime Minister from 1922 to 1940. But more infamously, he's known for being the first 20th century European fascist dictator. Yep, before the guy with the stash who had a real hatred for Jews. And I think Mussolini doesn't get as much flack as he deserves simply because he didn't do what Hitler did. Which is weird because he kind of did. Nonetheless, a fascist dictator does what a fascist dictator does. Fully suppressing free speech, not allowing meetings without government permission, fully controlled news stations, political killings, outlawing political parties that oppose fascism. Oh, what's that? You're an idiot and that doesn't sound bad enough to you? Okay, how about this? Mussolini's involvement with anti-Semitic regulations and the Holocaust. Oh yeah. He was extremely xenophobic, and not to mention buddy-buddy with Hitler. In fact, Hitler looked up to Mussolini. A lot of Mussolini's tactics, Hitler would use later on. Mussolini also invaded Ethiopia, and how would they do that? Well, you see this Geneva Convention? Fuck that! No, Mussolini decided to drop gas bombs on not just soldiers, which is already a war crime, but on civilians too. Although Europe was horrified with the gas bombs, they didn't do anything about it. Mussolini's pettiness, resulting from Hitler's pettiness, led to a humiliating defeat of the Italian forces during the Greco-Italian War. And that pretty much sums up his dictatorship. Stayed way too long and dragged Italy into a war that they didn't want to fight, nor were they prepared to fight. But you know something funny? A lot of Italians actually welcomed Mussolini's dictatorship. Like they knew he was going to be a dictator. But they wanted economic stabilization, and they thought, you know what, a dictator might help us with that. Haha, I'm gonna move on now. The hit on Indira Gandhi that would claim her life, October 31st, 1984. Indira Gandhi was an Indian politician who also served as Indian Prime Minister. Also, side note, Gandhi is an extremely common name in India, so I want to point out that she's not related to Mahatma Gandhi. Anyway, throughout Indira Gandhi's run in politics, her popularity would dwindle and slowly turn into hate from the people of India. By the way, Indira's whole life was involved in politics. Her father, Jawaharlal Nehru, my apologies if I mess up these names, I want to try rather than just playing a robotic voice, but still, my apologies, was a leading figure in the Indian movement for independence from the British rule. Now, I mentioned how Indira's life was fully indulged in politics because I'm going to just talk about her for a couple minutes, so that's just full transparency. I'm not going to get everything on here, especially the historical context with everything surrounding India during this time. She had a lot of accomplishments, as well as a lot of missteps that I'm not going to talk about. This is solely based on how October 31st events happened. So, some reasons people weren't fans of Indira Gandhi is because of her role in setting a state of emergency in the country for almost 2 years. 21 months to be exact. During this state of emergency, from 1975 to 1977, most of Gandhi's political opponents were imprisoned and the press were censored. More than 100,000 political opponents, journalists, and dissenters were imprisoned by Gandhi's regime. And during this time, a mass campaign by her son for vasectomies for all men was launched. Her son, Sanjay Gandhi, was the one doing it. Like, he wasn't personally doing it. I hope he wasn't personally doing it. Now, this state of emergency was supposedly because of internal and external threats to the Indian state. And once the state of emergency ended, Indira really thought that she had the people's favor in the bag. Which she didn't. But she got proven that in the election that happened a couple months later, towards the end of 1977, in which she and her party lost by a lot, mainly due to widespread backlash of the state of emergency. However, that party that would take control after Indira's state of emergency and failed election, that party didn't hold power that long. In fact, that party kind of crumbled. And Indira, who split supporters in Congress, now creating a new sort of Congress called Congress I for Indira, swept power back in 1980. Now, she did serve some jail time, but when she got back into power, her and her son's crimes were just bada boom, bada bing, gone. It's crazy how that usually works. Now, that son, Sanjay Gandhi, would die in a plane crash, only for Indira to motivate her other son, Rajiv Gandhi, into a political role. During the early 1980s, Indira Gandhi faced increasing pressure from secessionist factions, particularly from Sikhs in Punjab. In 1984, Indira Gandhi ordered the Indian Army to confront Sikh separatists at their sacred Golden Temple in Amritsar, resulting in several hundred fatalities, although that number is estimated to be in the thousands. This move was called Operation Blue Star, which inadvertently would sign Indira's fate. On October 31st, 1984, Indira Gandhi was gunned down in her garden by her own bodyguards. Sikh bodyguards. And the killing of Indira Gandhi isn't what makes this such a horrible event that happened in history. It's more so what happened afterwards in result of her gunning down. Because what would follow was the 1984 anti-Sikh riots, or also known as the anti-Sikh slaughter. In the anti-Sikh riot, roughly 3,000 Indian government figures would lose their lives, while roughly 8 to 17,000 Sikhs would lose theirs. And I haven't even brought up the roughly 50,000 Sikhs who were displaced during this time. And the best way I can describe how people were acting towards the Sikhs, and I don't mean this in a desensitive way, but it was literally like Gotham. People were walking around with clubs, bats, axes, just beating up on any Sikh they found. They would go to heavily populated Sikh neighborhoods and just cause terror, and by terror I mean murder people. It was a horrible time in history for a group of people who seem to have that constantly. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching, we are going to move on to Thanksgiving. Before we do, if you are enjoying this video so far, a like and a share really helps the channel out, and if I haven't earned a subscription yet, just wait until the end. Alright, let's get back into it. The worst disasters to happen on Thanksgiving. The Marianna coal mine disaster. November 28, 1908. The Marianna coal mine disaster would be the worst mining explosion disaster in the Washington area, specifically in Marianna, Pennsylvania. I'm almost certain it's pronounced Marianna instead of Marianna, because I've been to Pennsylvania, so I think that's how they pronounce it. Why do I think that? It's because everyone looks like me down there. Alright, moving on. The mine was opened in 1907, lasting only a year before a mine explosion would claim the lives of 154 men, only leaving one survivor. It is the 10th deadliest mining explosion in history, and the reason the number of fatalities was so high is because it was during a shift change. Imagine you went into work just to die, or dude, imagine you're getting off of work and you died. Fuck that. This particular mine would be subject to even more tragedy later on throughout its history. On September 23rd, 1957, the same coal mine would hold another explosion, claiming the lives of 6 of the 11 men inside of the coal mine. In 1988, an underground fire would occur, which would finally shut down the coal mine once and for all. That explosion that occurred in 1908, as well as other mining explosions that occurred around the same time in the country, led to the establishment of the U.S. Bureau of Mines in 1910. The Coconut Grove Fire, November 28, 1942. The Coconut Grove was an extremely popular restaurant, and the only reason I'm calling it a restaurant is because nightclubs did not officially exist at the time. But it pretty much was a nightclub. I think I just inferred that by what I just said, but fuck it. Throughout its livelihood, which started in 1927, the Coconut Grove was a popular destination, especially after the country took a hit from Prohibition. The Coconut Grove was located in downtown Boston, Massachusetts. A bunch of massholes. The basement of the Coconut Grove held a bar named Melody Lounge, while the first floor was a dining room, as well as a ballroom. Like mentioned, the Grove was a mighty popular place, especially on Thanksgiving. And on top of all those especiallys, this was the first year after World War II started. So this is when America was still kind of sending troops back home for Thanksgiving. They stopped doing that when the war became more and more serious later on. With roughly double the amount of people that the building could hold, more than 1,000 people were in the Grove when a small fire was first noticed, incinerating a decorative tree. Attempts to stop that fire fell short. And within 8 minutes, the extremely flammable decorations engulfing the Coconut Grove lit on fire. It was described as a fireball burst, with burning embers falling onto patrons. And unfortunately, this incident was bound to happen, with the main entrance just being one revolving door, a lack of exits, as well as no exit signs, an emergency door that should open no matter what, that was bolted, sealed, and locked, as well as another emergency door that was just bricked up. Bricked off. That's the bet, yeah. The patrons that night broke the revolving door trying to get out, and reports say that bodies would pile up the front entrance. People either died of asphyxiation, either from inhaling the smoke or just being crushed, or the other main cause of death was just burns. Not getting burnt and then dying because the smoke, just straight up burning to death. A lot of the victims were part of the Navy, which is why I mentioned the Navy earlier, because they were, off. They came to the grove to celebrate, and that would be their last night. This photo shows that with all the unclaimed hats. The fire would claim 492 lives. This was particularly due to the fact of the lack of exits, as well as the over-occupation. It is the deadliest nightclub fire and second deadliest single building fire. And now, mainly because there were so many Navy personnel who lost their lives, and I'm not saying that to say that if there wasn't, there wouldn't be justice, but specifically because of the Navy, justice was going to come in quickly and strictly. And not only with justice, but as well as procedures moving forward. And that actually brings us to the only light in this situation. The Coconut Grove would advance the medical field, particularly with burns, and the understanding of taking care of them. The London Broader Chart is a direct response to the Coconut Grove fire. Barnett Walensky was the Coconut Grove owner, and because of those fire code violations, he did stand before the grand jury, but he was not indicted. So genuinely, the only light that can be had is all the regulations that came afterwards, as well as the London Broader Chart as mentioned. Alright ladies and gentlemen, now we're moving on to Christmas. And I need to give a warning because we were talking about some pretty bad stuff beforehand. We full on jump into some of the worst coming up. So if you are sensitive to, and I'm going to have to censor some of these words, but I think you'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. If you're sensitive to sexual assault, rape, killing of children, all three of those 2 children, maybe just stop watching at this point because it's going to get pretty bad. If you are in the boat of this is the time where you should get out, have a good one. I hope you enjoyed the video so far. If you did, please leave a like. If you think I earned your subscription, then go ahead and click that button and I'll see you next week. To everyone else that is okay with more of the brutal stuff, let's get into it. Alright, so on Christmas Eve in 1865, a little hateful group called the Klu Klux Klan was formed. This little limp dick hate group is also known as the KKK. And what is the KKK? Well, it's just a bunch of racist fucks who couldn't accept that they lost the war, or the fact that other people don't agree with their extremely racist ways. They wear little costumes as ghosts of the Confederate soldiers that died 159 years ago. Former Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest was the KKK first Grand Wizard. Fucking dork. He also looks like he is racist. This hateful, not so secret, even though it's a considered secret group, is responsible for the murders, rapes, lynchings of countless black people, as well as those from northern states who came down into the southern states during Reconstruction. Reconstruction is the time after the Civil War. The KKK is recognizable for their use of violence and brutality, and as such in 1871, the Klu Klux Klan Act was set in stone by Congress, in which it states that the military can stop Klu Klux Klan activities from going on. And what that means is that's just for show, because they really didn't do that. I mean, sometimes they would. Also, the fact that it took 6 years for the American government to say that, hey, killing fellow Americans is bad, probably should say something to you. And it would only take 17 years for the government to say that the KKK is unconstitutional. I could have told you right away if you let me read it. Throughout the years, the Klan's power as well as population has dwindled. However, that does not mean there still aren't a ton of people out there. It is reported in 2016 that at least 6,000 registered Klan members are still out there. And I also want to state, in today's age, a lot of people will not tell you if they're racist or not, because they know better. But that doesn't mean they're not racist. So, here's an idea. People are people. Anyway, a day full of cheer and holly and glory, ruined by a bunch of racists. Good job. You lost the war and then you ruined Christmas.
Sons of bitches!
The Congo Christmas Slaughter, 2008. The Lord's Resistance Army, aka the LRA, is a Ugandan rebel group who many refer to as a Christian cult. Prominent in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the LRA are known for their ruthlessness and terror. Some examples are cutting off people's lips, killing children within the pursuit of slaughtering villages. And during Christmas of 2008, they would live up to that notoriety. On Christmas Eve and Christmas Day of 2008, the LRA targeted 5 villages, waited until they were celebrating the holidays, and then attacked them, killing virtually everyone. They would use axes, bats, and machetes, and with the women, they would rape them before killing them. The final death toll is still uncertain and probably will be forever, but some reports put the number of 600 people who lost their lives within the span of only 3 days. The International Crime Court, or ICC, has hundreds of warrants for those responsible, many of which are still out there free today. Warrants are set out because of the brutality, in which just one example of what the ICC states that the LRA did. They state they separated the men and boys, taking them 40 feet away from the village's church, and used bars and axes and clubs to hit them over the head to kill them. With the women, they took groups of women and young girls to the forest, raped them, and then smashed their skulls. The LRA carried out multiple attacks just like that, throughout multiple villages from December 24th all the way into early January. One of the most recent slaughterings in our history, and I just learned about it today. So we already talked about the deadliest nightclub fire, but now we're going to talk about the deadliest hotel fire that would occur on Christmas Day in 1971. The Daeyeonggak Hotel Fire, December 25th, 1971. There is absolutely no pronunciation or how to say this on the internet, so I am sorry if I screw this up, but I'm going with what I think it says. White guy pronunciation. Alright, the most deadliest hotel fire would occur in Seoul, South Korea. The Daeyeonggak Hotel was a skyscraper hotel, which was the first skyscraper in Seoul at the time. It was quite the spectacle. There were 21 above ground floors and 2 basement floors, as well as a nightclub on the 21st floor. But don't let that spectacle fool you. It was cheaply made. Like, it cost a lot of money, don't get me wrong, because I'll probably never see that amount of money in my life. But the interior had Korean paper. Imagine like wallpaper. Like, it had that kind of material. And it was built mainly out of wood. Now this is one thing, especially seeing how today's world, there's a lot of cheap homes out there. But the thing is, a lot of cheap homes have exits, and safety precautions at least. The lack of safety/emergency exits weren't the only exits that were lacking, just mainly exits in general. There wasn't an emergency staircase outside the windows. And finally, to top it off, there was no sprinkler system. Why would you need water in a 23-story high building that has stoves and stuff? Oh, what's that? A stove just caught on fire? Whoops. On Christmas Day, the hotel was packed. Everything I just said is like a big pot of stew for tragedy. On the first floor of the hotel, there was a coffee shop, which contained a gas stove. One gas stove was next to a spare 20-kilogram propane tank. And whether it was from the spare tank that was just leaking somehow, or from the actual gas stove top, some sort of gas got ignited. And at around 9:50 a.m. on that Christmas morning, the fire started and immediately shut down the elevators and blocked off the stairs. This made it to where there was absolutely no way for you to get down if you were on those higher floors. Well, there was a way, and we'll get into that in a second. It is estimated that there were roughly 300 people inside the hotel when it caught on fire. Within an hour and a half, the 21-story high skyscraper was engulfed in flames. Like the whole skyscraper. Those trapped on the higher floors had no other choice. Either it was die from asphyxiation or maybe burns, or to jump out the window and hope for the best. Now in the footage that I'm showing you, which we'll get into in a second because that's also very important, it shows people jumping off. Some of the poor souls who had to jump out of the windows had the idea to grab mattresses and try to jump, hoping that would shield them. However, in this famous photo, we see someone trying that, and unfortunately this person would not make it. Luckily, the fire station was very close by, and almost 500 firefighters responded. But again, there's barely any exits, which also means entrances for the firefighters to get in. And on top of that, they had bodies everywhere that they had to go around just to get to the building. Other victims inside the hotel tried to use curtains, beddings, anything they could find to make some sort of rope and try to climb down. Again, some were successful, most weren't. 166 people would perish, with 25 people missing, and it left 68 other people injured. So roughly 191 out of roughly 300 people just gone on a Christmas morning. I can't overstate how maliciously incompetent the people were in charge of the safety precautions in the building. Kim Yong-san, the businessman behind the hotel, and 4 other hotel officials were charged with carelessness and improper construction, as well as 2 former city officials and 1 fire officer on charges of negligence. On the plus side, which it's really not a plus side, during rescue attempts, it became obvious that the truck's ladders would not reach to where they needed to get. So helicopters were brought in instead. That makes an extremely risky rescue turn into a fatal rescue attempt, because 2 people would lose their lives during a rescue attempt with the helicopter. The flames and smoke affecting the air made it hard for the helicopters to be able to pilot. And on top of that, they have to get close to the window and be able to, be still enough to grab someone and then pull them out without dropping them. This led to the standardization of having those huge ladders that you see on fire trucks today on fire trucks, specifically in South Korea. The Daeyeonggak hotel fire also set in stone the mandate on having sprinkler systems constructed with new buildings. Now, this footage you're seeing is actually very important. This was the first time in South Korea that something like this was nationally televised. And that explains why it shows people falling to their deaths. But it goes to show you how loose the news stations was back then. I mean, this was the first time. Reportedly. I don't want to say that's set in stone because there's a lot of words I can't read because I don't read other languages. That's how that works. Anyway, this footage that I'm showing you is from nearly a 5-hour long broadcast. And that will be linked below. But again, it's very graphic. Please, if you're going to watch it, I hope you've already seen stuff that has already messed with you. That sounded better in my head, but look, if you're having a good day, don't watch it, Just do this. Just watch it vicariously through me. Alright everyone, that's where we're going to end the video today. It's time to take a breather. I know it was a rougher video. Whenever I'm writing the scripts for these videos, it's just like a school report for me, and I'm interested in it. And then once I start talking about bad things happening to people, it kind of weighs on me. So I realized why I stopped doing these videos as often as I once did. And we're probably going to go back to that because I don't like talking about death I've been recording for an hour. This video is probably going to be like 10 minutes. Every once in a while I get a morbid fix and we'll go into that, but horror usually does it for me. So we'll go back into doing that. I have something fun planned for Christmas. Hopefully you'll, subscribe and I'll see you then. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. This one is probably going to take me a while to edit. I hope your holidays have been good so far, and I think that's enough yapping, so yeah. Alright, bye.